Hello, beautiful people. I am at LAX and waiting for my flight. And any of you who know what it's like to go through LAX, Los Angeles Airport, know that it's pretty hectic and that it's a whole experience, right? You avoid it if you can. So here's the deal. Here's what happened to us this morning. We were planning on flying out at 6 a.m. I had changed my 1:45 p.m. flight to 6 a.m. so that we could get to the beautiful continent of Africa early in the day rather than later in the evening on Saturday. Today's Friday. And we get to the airport and the change that was paid for and scheduled and confirmed and that we got alerts for on our apps, well, it didn't happen. The flight wasn't ticketed. So here we are standing at Delta One, beautiful first class lounge experience, ready to get on our beautiful flight and have the whole travel experience, which is part of the journey for me. I like to travel nicely if I can. So what do? We find out that the ticket is indeed not updated and we still have to take the 1:45 p.m. So we're here waiting at a nearby hotel and frustrated as I may be, I know that this is already my first leadership lesson on this journey, this beautiful journey, that sometimes we face obstacles and we have to keep going, even if we're frustrated, because the end goal is much more important and beautiful than whatever we're going through in the moment. So we keep going and we're safe and I'm waiting at a beautiful hotel and we'll get there, and in the evening when we see the beautiful lights in the city of Ghana. So it's all good. We're going to go many times. It's not going to be our last time going. So I'm excited and I'm still going to keep going. I'm still going to have a beautiful journey and I'm not going to let the minor things impede the major things.
traded in gold and so on and so forth, picked up gold, and then they started picking up slaves. And for them, slaves were people, they would burn down villages, burn down towns, and pick individuals, young, old, and so on and so forth. And we'll talk more about the transatlantic slave trade on our journey. But slave trade, I mean, this trade started so rapidly, and news spread around Europe quite fast. And people started, taking notice of our destination. So here in Ghana alone, the Portuguese were the first to come. You had the Dutch, you had the Danes, you had the Swedes, you had the Germans, you had the French, and then you had the British. All these people participated heavily in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, dotted along the coastal belt of Ghana, we have over 40 forts and castles, all of which participated in the transatlantic slave trade. On our city tour today, we shall see 2 forts and 1 castle. We are going to visit 3 different communities. We are going to visit British Accra, where the British stayed and ruled Ghana from, and we'll see a fort there. We will see Dutch Accra, where the Dutch were. We'll see a fort there. And then we'll also see Danish Accra, where the Danes settled people from Denmark and they built a castle. We'll see that also. And we'll see all these 3 communities. But slave trade went on for a very long time till it was abolished. When it was abolished, all these Europeans started receding to their home countries. But the English decided to stay. And they called the coastal belt of Ghana, where all these forts and castles were dotted, they called it their colony. And that is when the Europeans started demarcating Africa for themselves. I have this portion, this is mine. The French, the Germans, everybody took whatever they had to take there. In Ghana, the English took the coastal belt and they called it the Gold Coast. For them, wherever they go, based on the commodity they find, they name the place after the commodity. So they called this place the Gold Coast because they found gold here. Côte d'Ivoire was called the Ivory Coast because they found so much ivory there. The stretch between Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Ghana was called the Slave Coast because so many slaves were shipped through that coast. And so the middle belt of Ghana was also controlled by a powerful group of people. Fortunately for our tour, we shall be visiting the middle belt of Ghana. These people were called the Asante people. I'm not saying Ashanti. I'm saying Asante. Asante. Yeah, this group were the Asante people. The Asante Kingdom reigned in the middle belt of Ghana up until 1900 when the British insulted them, because at the time the British still wanted to penetrate the middle belt of Ghana and take it. Of course, there was a lot more gold there as well. But the Asantes were powerful warriors. They have a slogan that Ukuma Pima Apimbeba. We are the porcupine warriors. When you kill 1,000 will resurface. And so they had engaged the British in several battles, about 5 of them, up until the battle in 1900 known as the Golden Stool War or the Asante War. The British had insulted Asantes to a war because, you see, in modern day, a president is the one that leads his people to a war and would declare a war. But the British requested high indemnities in terms of gold to be paid to them, and because the Ashantis could not pay, they exiled their king to the Seychelles Island. They had no king. And so the British demanded for what was called the Golden Stool. The Golden Stool was a stool that was conjured from the skies, and that every Asante person sees it as the Sunsum, which is the spirit, soul, and embodiment of all Asante people. When the stool is taken away from them, there will be no kingdom called Asante Kingdom. And once we travel there, I would even explain this further. But in 1900, the Asantes did a replica of the stool for the British. They went to England, realized that was a fake one. They came back and threatened them to a war. They had no king to lead them to a war, but they had a warrior woman known as Ya Asantua. She mobilized all the satellite communities and the men around to fight the British in this famous war. She was a lady over 60 years at the time. And they fought in this battle. They made sure that the stool was not taken away from them. Unfortunately for them, they were defeated by the British. This woman was again held captive and also exiled to the Seychelles Island. And that's how come the British penetrated the middle belt of Ghana. The northern belt of Ghana, they couldn't, because that also had a lot of immigrant groups. So they went with a proposition and said, listen, your closest allies are the Ashantis. We have defeated them. We're forming a new country. You join us or you're on your own. And so they went with that proposition to protect them, and they agreed, and they called the Northern Belt the Protectorate. And so this is what actually formed the country Ghana. The Eastern and the Volta region thereabout till 1957, 1956, there was a plebiscite, and they also decided to join this new colony. Now, the name, so after all this, there was a young guy who was studying in America. He was listening to a lot of activists, Malcolm X, all your activists, the Du Bois, all these people. He was very radical, and his radicalism was shown in his writings and everything. At the time, we had an elite political party in Ghana known as the United Gold Coast Convention, and their slogan was self-government within the shortest possible time. But this young man was invited to join them from America as their general secretary. But when he came, the activities of this political party was not sitting well with them. You want to gain independence from the British, but you're in bed with them drinking tea. There was no way you were going to gain independence. So he decided to break away from them, started his own political party known as the Conventions People's Party, and his slogan was self-government now. And so somewhere around 1948, there was some misunderstanding in Ghana, and we had some people called the Big Six. They were arrested, and they thought that this guy was also part of it. So they put him in jail. And at the time, the British had agreed that, okay, we're going to give you independence. But the mistake they made was that this guy that they put in jail, they decided to put his face on the ballot because people were asking for his release from prison. Unfortunately for them, while in prison, they campaigned for him, and he still won the election. Wow. So they had to take him out of jail to come and lead his people. Yeah, and he gained independence for Ghana on the eve of 6th March 1957. His name is Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah became the first prime minister of Ghana. At the time, the Queen of England, who just died, we call her Auntie Lizzie. Auntie Lizzie was still the head of state, and Kwame Nkrumah was the prime minister until 1st July 1960, when she decided to hand over all our assets to us. We named the country Ghana. Ghana because Ghana means warrior king. The leader of the then Ghana Empire was seen as a warrior and a king. So we chose the name Ghana and did away with the Gold Coast, because this was a name that was given to us by our colonial masters. But the interesting thing about our history is that when Kwame Nkrumah became the president of Ghana, he wanted to unite the entire continent of Africa. So we would have had what would have been known as the United States of Africa. As you may be aware, about 60% or so of the world resources lies in Africa. Gold, cocoa, timber, uranium, bauxite, everything is here. And so his goal was, let's all unite and use these resources to develop the continent. And at the time, he was leaning more towards the Eastern Bloc, China, USSR, Soviet Union, and so on and so forth. The Americans saw him as a communist because he wasn't leaning towards the West. And as a result, 24th of February 1966, he was on his way for a peace mission deal, only to hear that a coup has been done and he's been overthrown on the throne. We went into the archives to check. The American CIA was behind it. Wow. And 24th of February 1966, he was overthrown. From 1966 up to 1992, this country was turned upside down. One coup d'etat onto another coup d'etat onto another coup d'etat, till a young army general known as Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlins, he came in and said, listen, he also had done 2 coups already, and said, we cannot continue on this path. Let's write a constitution to rule this country. So we wrote the 1992 constitution. He himself stood for elections. He won. He went to another term. He won, and then finally handed over power. And this is what actually set in motion our democracy. From 1992 up until 2024, Ghana has been one of the most peaceful countries in Africa. According to the Peace Index released in 2021, Ghana is the 40th most peaceful country in the world and number 2 in Africa. Wow. So you are actually in one of the safest places on earth. Wow. December 7th, which is just this coming Saturday, will be our next election. And we are hoping that it will still be very peaceful and we can still continue to be a beacon of hope for other African countries. So this is actually a little background about the country you have visited, and now this sets in motion our city tour. Awesome. Thank you. All right.
O clemassimo a umile
gold, and then green. These are the national colors of Ghana. The red stands for the blood and toil of our forefathers who fought for the independence of this country. The gold stands for the fact that we're rich in gold. Remember, we're called the Gold Coast. And then green shows our green vegetation. Hopefully tomorrow when we travel, you shall see the countryside, the mountains, the valleys, the farmlands, and all of that. You will see all those things as well. And then the black star in the Ghana is the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to gain independence. So king of a town has arrived in the church service. Our kings are actually picked up in umbrellas. So it means that there's a king that has come. So that's how come those umbrellas, he's under the umbrella and everything, you know. So yes, so this is a typical Ghanaian church service.
That's cool.
So you still have kings, like, so you said there's a king that's there.
In Ghana, if you want to win an election, if the king of Accra is so powerful, very educated man, highly educated. In the pots that you see to your right, there are some pots, and then the black round thing. We didn't have blenders, so that's what we mashed our tomatoes, our pepper, everything in before blenders came. All the round thing that is black, And there's also the earthenware pot. That's how we call it, the earthenware pot. And we mash our tomatoes and everything in there. And also, that's what we eat our fufu in. So if you have fufu, you eat your fufu. And then you see the mortar and the pestle. And that is what we use in pounding the fufu. Yeah. So in the olden days, because there were no refrigerators and sometimes you wanted like very cold water to drink, we would put these coolers outside. And when the dew falls on it, the next morning when you fetch the water, it is very cold. Yeah. Here also you find the same thing here. The things in the gallon, are all palm oil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's palm oil. We use a lot of palm oil in cooking in Ghana. And palm oil is good. I'll talk about it when we are going to Cape Coast. But that's palm oil.
So that's like barbecue or something?
No, well, it's like cooking oil. It's like a vegetable oil that you use in cooking. Yes. So there are certain meals we cook in Ghana that you would definitely will use palm oil. For example, the meal called red. That's beans, black eyed peas, and normally we cook the stew and put the black eyed peas in it, and you have to use the red oil. You also add the spinach stew during the first dinner. The spinach stew, and we also use the red oil in cooking that. So yeah, and that's all. It's palm oil. Coming up to your right is the palace of the king of the Ashantis. The politicians, military. I said, I see each of them speed. Now, I think I will cross it. It's a boy. So that's the palace to your right. So this is the palace we are visiting. We are going to visit the Palace Museum to learn more about the Asante people. Okay, so we are right here